Welcome back to the Discipler Group. I've been so impressed as I travel around the Baltimore-Washington conference to see the variety of worship, the creativity in worship, the variety of experiences that people have in worship. That's because of worship leadership and the way they continue to plan for worship. I'm grateful for all you're doing. We hope that these 3 sessions on worship have given you some additional ideas, some new experiences that you can incorporate in worship. Today we'll first hear from Reverend Dr. William McLean, who resides right here in the Baltimore-Washington Conference. He's a professor at Wesley Theological Seminary. He'll talk to us about testifying or giving your own personal testimony. For Dr. McLean, testimony has been an important experience in his own life, and particularly making a commitment to the future. We'll also hear today from Dr. Leonard Sweet, who is the E. Stanley Jones Professor of Evangelism at Drew Theological Seminary. He has a passion for reaching the postmodern culture, and will talk about worship through the lens of an acronym called EPIC: experiential, participatory, image-rich, and connecting. And finally today we'll hear from Dr. Tom Bandy, who is a senior partner with Esom, Bandy, and Associates Incorporated. Dr. Bandy has spent his life helping leaders grow disciples and growing discipling churches with integrity and courage. Today he'll talk with us about a culture out there that's not coming to our church, but has a hunger, has a spiritual hunger. The only problem is that what they don't want from the church is a little taste from a cup or a little piece of bread, but they want to be immersed in the Holy Other. They want to be overwhelmed with the presence of God's grace. We need to continue to meet the worship needs of those coming, but also to find new ways of reaching those that have a hunger, but yet haven't found the church, are afraid to come through the doors, people who want more than just a taste, and offer them a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Now, let us together listen and share in the experiences of our teachers this morning.
Testimony in the Wesleyan tradition and in our United Methodist churches has been an important part of worship over the years. I recall my childhood back in Alabama when people gladly were willing to witness what God had done in their lives, how God had brought them through. But there was also something else to it, not just what God had done, but what they were going to do. Their testimony always ended with, "Let me tell you my determination." That determination was to keep on following Jesus, to follow through with discipleship, with responsibility, with stewardship. It was an important part. It was always a time I looked forward to in our worship experience. We've lost some of that, partly because people are not willing so often to say publicly what they believe and what Jesus has done for them. I believe that our worship could be enhanced greatly if we offered opportunities for people to witness to what God has done in their lives. I think that it would mean a lot to seekers as well as those who have sought and found the Lord.
When I first wrote about EPIC, it was about 10 years ago, and I said that if EPIC is right, if this new epistemology is right, the future belongs to the Charismatics and the Eastern Orthodox. It is not true Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. Christianity is still the fastest growing religion in the world. The issue is, where is Christianity growing? And it is not growing in the North and in the West. Christianity is dying in the West. Where Christianity is growing is in the South and in the East. And the kinds of Christianity that are growing in the South and in the East are basically of 2 forms. One is Catholicism in its Roman and Eastern form, in its highest liturgical form, and the other is Pentecostalism. Now, what does that tell us about the future of Christianity? Well, it tells us one thing. Now, notice what's missing in terms of what is healthy. You've got highly liturgical worship, and you've got very spontaneous worship. You got Catholicism, Pentecostalism. What's missing? Protestantism. Highly liturgical forms of worship are very epic. They're experiential, they're heavily participatory, they're very image-rich, and it's very connectional. And the same with Pentecostalism. Very experiential. I mean, I just say, you know what? Anglicans are Pentecostals in drag. As you design worship, move it to the extremes. Move it one way or another, but move it in that direction. I mean, if you're doing traditional worship, well, sometimes the worst thing you can do is to make it more contemporary. Make it more traditional. If you're doing a processional, and this is one of the successes of a church in our tribe in Atlanta, Georgia, Peachtree United Methodist Church. Anybody been there? I mean, I was there to preach not too long ago, and Don said we're going to process in. And it took us the singing of the 2 hymns. I mean, the first hymn, we had to sing it twice to process everybody in. At the end of it, I said, Don, you processed everything but a stuffed pig. He said, that's not a bad idea. If you're going to do it, whatever you do, make it. If you're going to do something, then make it experiential, participatory, image-rich, and connective. But push it towards both extremes.
You have to understand that when seekers, when the spiritually yearning, institutionally alienated public, when they consider experiencing worship, they are not coming to receive a wee little wafer and some holy water or holy grape juice in a wee little cup. They want to drown in the sea of love. They want to be swept away by the power of God. They want to be impacted in their gut, in their heart, and in their lifestyle. And if they are swept away in a tidal wave of grace and washed up on a career path 5 miles down the road, that's okay with them. They have very different expectations out of worship. Even in our worship here, I noticed that much of our worship was based on being able to read a screen and read words and recite in unison. But the primary way people learn today is no longer through reading. It is through media. It is through sound bites. It is through relationships. It is through being interactive. It is through images. It is experiential. But we're living into a world where no one cares about the 20-minute sermon. No matter how good it is, no one remembers what you said. But they do remember those unrehearsed and spontaneous things that have occurred in the worship service that have been the real factors to reveal the truth about the authenticity of the spiritual life of your leaders and of your church. So I'm in a church and I can hear wonderful expository preaching, and I mean of the highest quality imaginable, and within 50 minutes, no one can even remember the points of the sermon. But they do remember how the pastor, the preacher, was backing out of the pulpit and the Geneva gown spilled the water over the script, over the sermon, and how the pastor must have thought the microphone was off and said something, and they have immediately remembered that to determine the spiritual authenticity of that person, and that has decided whether they will return to the church. It's not what you say, it's what you model. It's not what you read, it's what you experience for the spiritually yearning, institutionally alienated public. And the spiritually yearning, institutionally alienated public is not looking to become a member of anything, but to be involved in a process that will take them deeper and deeper and deeper into their relationship with Christ and their walk with Jesus on the road to mission. That's a discipling process.